broadcast journalist and TV producer. Welcome to my interview series, How to Get into TV, Radio and Film. I'm doing this interview series for you guys, for all of you who are interested in having a career in media. There's so many different roles in this business, some of which you may never have heard of. And so I want to give you an insight into all the different job roles available. Each week, I catch up with different industry experts and they share their career paths, but they also give top tips as to how you too could break into this business. Now, it's another week, so that means another great guest. So let me introduce you to her. She is a Foley artist working at Molyneux. It's one of the leading suppliers of post-production for feature films, documentaries, TV dramas, and other content. Welcome, Rebecca Heathcote. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Samina. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you. So do share with us, how did you get into this business and why did you choose this business as a career?
So I got into the industry kind of straight out of university. I went to university and studied media production, TV and radio and film. And I didn't know how to get into the industry at all or which direction I wanted to go in. So I started I got some jobs as a floor runner on some local films and TV shows up in the northeast.
Where was this?
That was in Sunderland in the northeast.
Sunderland, right.
Yeah. And then started getting more and more runner jobs. And then
how did you get those runner jobs? I mean, what did it take to, because it's not easy getting a foot in the door. So can you just share with those watching who might be at entry level, like exactly what you did?
Yes. So it was a lot of time looking on social media, seeing if there was anything, open calls for films and stuff. I think one of my first jobs, I was street casting, and I saw that they were casting, so I contacted the production manager, see if they need any help. Some of them were through the university's kind of career service, but then once you've kind of got the first couple, then your name's out there and it starts the ball rolling.
And I guess it's about, making those contacts and kind of proving yourself like, I can do this.
Yeah, definitely. That's the main thing, showing up and showing that you're interested.
So I'll tell you what's interesting. You're a Foley artist. I think it's quite an enigmatic role, alongside a few others in the business. So when I go to the cinema or I'm watching something, at home or with family or friends, when the credits roll, they always go to me, amongst other roles, Foley artist. What on earth is a Foley artist? Now, I usually explain, but you're the expert, so I'm going to hand over to you today to explain what is a Foley artist.
Yeah, it's quite it's not a name that kind of tells what it is very much. So a Foley artist is someone who creates bespoke sound effects for a project. So be that film, TV, video games, whatever it is, and we create those sound effects physically. So using our bodies, using props, using things around us, we create the sounds. And we work with the Foley team. So I will perform the sound and then a Foley mixer will be recording me, making sure it sounds like it's in the right space. And then a Foley editor will take those recordings and cut them up into sync and make sure that it sits in with everything else.
So give us an example of a production you've worked on and describe to us what those sounds were that you were, creating and recording.
I mean, it's such a varied job and you get so many interesting projects. So we can do anything from, so we did Emma that's recently come out and it's all beautiful period piece, delicate kind of, the costumes and the fabrics for that, and then jewelry and kind of stuff like that. But also we go to the other end, so like stuff like Mission Impossible, we might need like an explosion or a big battle with lots of people punching weapons and stuff. Or we've done stuff like we do the Fantastic Beasts films, So we kind of get a lot of creativity there and a lot of scope to design how the creatures are going to sound and kind of what we're going to need for each of them.
You know what, a lot of people well, certainly the ones who ask me, they always think that the sound is recorded when, say, you know, you're on a film set and they're filming the scenes. But that's not always true, is it? For particular sounds that are required, and that's where you come in.
Yes, so on set, they just really want to focus on capturing the performance of the actor. So the microphones are all aimed at, you know, the mouths of the actors so that they can get that performance, which doesn't necessarily pick up all the surrounding noises. So anything they touch or anything going on in the background, then trying to not record because they're really trying to get the performance. So we'll kind of piece together the missing bits and kind of bring focus to anything else. And also if the sound that they're recording on set isn't quite right and they need to do ADR, which is automated dialogue recording, where they replace the actor's voice performance, we can fill in, if they were walking down a corridor during that scene, we'll do the footsteps and fill in the gaps that are missing.
Wow, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating job you have. So for example, so if you're on a film set, like you said, if the footsteps down the corridors, to really get those accentuated in the film, you'd record those separately. If somebody throws something and it smashes, then you would record that thing being thrown and smashed, and that would be dropped into the edit of the film later on.
Yeah, that's right. We cover three main passes. So we cover, first we do cloth moves, which is all the sounds of the costumes that the actors are wearing, because, you know, if you're wearing a big puffer jacket and you're moving around, that's going to make a sound, or if you're wearing sequins. So we go through the whole film and do all the cloth movement for the film.
It's quite a detailed, wow, it's quite detailed. You really have to be focused on every little element of, you know, movement or action.
Yeah, we cover every single little movement. And then we do the whole film again with the footsteps. So I've got a collection of hundreds of pairs of shoes, any different character and whatever they might be wearing, heels, boots, big shoes, small shoes. And I will perform in sync with the characters, the footsteps. And then third pass we do is everything else. So like you said, somebody throws a vase and it smashes, we'll get a vase, we'll throw it and smash it. Or
I'm really curious to know, how do you coordinate everything? Because, you know, I'm sure there's times when the movement is so quick or so odd that to kind of sync with that is going to be challenging.
Yeah, it is. Luckily now we use a software called Pro Tools, so we can do things in layers. So if there is, say, a big explosion, we might go, right, let's do the sound of all the windows breaking. So we'll do glass shattering. And then we'll go, right, well, there's a big metal thing that goes flying, so let's do that next. And we'll kind of split it up into all the elements. And then once it's played together, it'll sound just like a big explosion.
Wow. And then do you have to recreate kind of the areas, like you mentioned the corridor, you know, like an actor walking down the corridor. If there's another sort of setup, do you have to find a similar location in which to recreate those sounds that have been happened in the action?
Well, so we've got a Foley theatre, which it's amazing. Everyone should go and see a Foley theatre. But in it, we've got all different floor surfaces. So we've got in our new one at Molyneux, we've got a couple of really nice wood surfaces, marble, cobbles, slabs, tile, metal, all sorts of floor surfaces, so that we can match whatever's happening on screen. But then it's the job of the Foley mixer to make it sound like it's in that space. So if we're walking down a corridor, they'll put a reverb on to make it sound like you're in a corridor. Or if it's in a lift, say, we'll get a nice rubbery surface and we'll put a metal box nearby, and the footsteps will sound like they're in a big metal box, which is what a lift is. So yeah, it's a lot of experimenting.
Yeah, no, it sounds really fascinating, and I'm sure a lot of people at entry level are probably have never heard of a Foley artist, because a lot of people I know have certainly not heard of a Foley artist. If you work in the business, then of course you're going to know what a Foley artist is. So I think this is great, you sharing all this, because this might be of inspiration for somebody who wants to work in post-production sound, but they never even considered that they could be responsible for creating different sounds for film, drama, documentaries, or whatever the other content might be. Now, what's interesting about your job is the sounds you create, but on the other side, there's the silence, because even though we think a room is empty and there's no sound, actually there is a sound. So could you just explain that, in a bit more detail? That might sound a bit weird, but it's true, right?
No, absolutely. It totally makes sense. And a lot of our job is to to ask each other kind of, what do you want to hear here? We're telling a story essentially with the sounds that we make. And what is important to the narrative and what's important to the emotion of the scene. So if there's a scene where there's a conversation between two people and I say, I'm going to go make a cup of tea, and they walk off, are you going to want to hear them making a cup of tea in the background? Is that going to add to the storyline? Yes, no. Or if it's kind of a really intense scene with two people having a really intense discussion, but they're in a really busy place, how much of that do you want to hear? Because not a lot, because you want to really focus on the performance and on the emotion of the scene. But then certain scenes call for kind of big everything. It's all about dynamics and the peaks and troughs.
And what about scenes where there's a long periods of silence? Do you have to kind of take care of the silence as well, or?
Well, usually that's the kind of atmospheres of any space is laid in by a sound effects editor. So they'll lay in the sound of a quiet room in wherever a quiet room in London, which will sound, they're very different to a quiet room in the middle of the countryside.
Yeah.
And they'll lay those in. And then our performance goes on top of that, so it sounds like it's in the correct space.
It's really fascinating. Seriously, I find this really fascinating, and I hope those who are tuning in today do too. And I'm sure those who are, joining us now are going to be like, next time they watch some sort of content, a film or drama or whatever, it's going to make them think twice about, oh, I bet Rebecca might have done that, or another Foley artist might have done that. It's quite an eye-opener.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the beauty of our job is if we've done a really good job, you shouldn't notice, because it should sound exactly like what's happening. And you should be kind of, the suspension of disbelief should be there, and you should just believe that the sound you're hearing is the sound that they recorded on set. You've got a problem if it doesn't sound like that and you kind of notice. But yeah, we've done our best job when you don't notice we've done anything.
Yeah, and I think, can you just talk a little bit about, like, if you're watching visuals that are not so great, let's just take a YouTube, a video made by somebody, and the visuals are not so great, but the audio is great, versus the video being great and the audio not being so great. Can you just kind of differentiate, like, how jarring one might be versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think bad sound is always just immediately the forefront. You can kind of watch bad visuals and you can kind of get away with it more so, I think, than bad sound, because it really takes you out of it and you kind of like, what did they say? Or, there's too much noise in the background. It's too distracting.
It is, yeah. That's exactly what I just wanted, clarified. So tell me, what makes a great Foley artist? What skills are required, for those who might be joining us today and they're like, well, actually what she does is pretty interesting. How on earth do I get into that? First, just discuss with me, what makes a great Foley artist and what skills are required?
Well, really you need a kind of creative mind, because every day you're inventing new ways to create a sound using things that aren't necessarily the thing that would make the sound. And because, sorry, Samina.
It's okay. Just let me repeat that, because I know, like, let's take the theatre you have.
Yeah.
So you've got lots of different things in there.
Yeah.
And so you said, like, you've got to have a creative mind to know that actually, if I use, I don't know, this piece of metal to make a sound that wouldn't ordinarily be metal, then you've got to really kind of be thinking out the box. Yeah.
Yeah, you've really got to think outside the box and be listening to everything that, you know, you touch, or, you know, you go through a nice sounding door and you're like, oh, that creaks nice. You know, that's the kind of things that I'm doing all the time. And
it's a lot of paying attention to your environment and what's going on, because when you then watch these films to recreate the sounds, you've got to really tune into the minutiae detail.
Yeah, you've got to kind of really pick down into what really everything is going to sound like, and what would make a similar sound if you combine those things. What is a thing made of?
And tell me, what are the pathways to becoming a Foley artist? Do you have to have a certain degree? Do you have to, you know, should you have done a certain amount of training, or can you be trained on the job? Can you just tell us the different pathways to becoming a Foley artist?
Yeah, it's very much a train on the job thing. There's no, at the minute, there's no kind of courses. There's a few, but really, to be a Foley artist, you need practice. And you need to be practicing all the time. So when I'm walking down the street, I'm walking in sync with someone in front of me, trying to make sure that, you know, I'm practicing walking in time with someone else. Or when I'm at home, sometimes if I'm watching something on the television, I'll stand up and I'll walk in sync with the characters, because it's just kind of muscle memory, and practice makes perfect. Because it's a physical job, it's just getting into routines. The best way to get in really is to kind of get an entry-level job at a post-production house or a facility that has Foley, as like a receptionist or a runner, like I did, and then try and learn from the established Foley artists. That's really the best way, and the way it's always kind of been.
So essentially, get your foot in the door, even if it's not in the job role you want, just so you've got the access to the job you want. You know, you mentioned, like, you know, being a receptionist. There's no shame in being a receptionist. So long as you're in through the door of a production house or a production company or whatever that might be, then you're in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I started as a receptionist. When I decided I wanted to do sound, I started as a receptionist at a post-production house in Manchester, and kind of showed my interest. And after work, I'd go and sit with the dubbing mixers and learn what they were doing. And I learned Pro Tools through the facilities that were there. And then when Foley projects come in, they get me in to have a go at it. And that's really the best way to do it. And then once people notice you're interested and you're in the door, then you're the person they're always going to go to.
And would you advise that those who might want to follow in your footsteps learn any software?
It would be useful. It is useful because nowadays,
software. What would you suggest?
So the industry standard is Pro Tools, which is it's become more affordable. It's kind of, you can pay monthly and stuff, so there's ways of getting it, and there's a free version you can learn on, which is good. There's also software like Reaper that's coming into more use, especially with games, and Reaper's free. So Reaper and Pro Tools, if you can get the hang of them, then you'll be fine.
And you know, this industry is expanding in many different ways. It's, you know, as you just said, gaming is huge at the moment, right? And it's going to become even bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of our work at the minute is in games. We just finished Ghost of Tsushima and Watch Dogs, and, you know, these big games, because the games industry is looking to film, because games are becoming more cinematic. So they're looking to people with film experience to bring that cinematic quality to their games. So
And games are also about storytelling these days. They're not just get from A to B by jumping over this or that. There is actual stories and built into the gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all narrative, and we do a lot of stuff with cutscenes where, you know, it's almost a short film, some of these cutscenes in games. You just further in the story.
No, it sounds fascinating. So listen, for those who want to get into this business, you know, whether it's in TV, radio or film, because I'm sure what you do can relate over to radio as well, radio drama for perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. There are Foley artists that specialise in radio drama, and
so there's a lot of scope available. So you've got gaming, TV, radio, film, and other kinds of content. So as a general, what's the best piece of general advice you can give to anyone at entry level who's just trying to break into this business and they might want to go down the path that you're in?
Just try and get in somewhere and just show your interest and be up for learning something new every day and turning up and, you know, put the effort in, and then it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your, you know, career story as a Foley artist. I find it fascinating what you do. Yeah, and thank you for all the advice as well. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
No worries. Thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, I'm really interested to hear from you. No doubt you will have watched several interviews by now with all my, you know, my amazing guests. But have you taken on the advice of any of them? If you have, I'd be really interested to know how you've done that and how you've implemented it. And if it's helped you succeed, you know, progressing one step closer to getting a foot in through the door, or maybe it's helped you in a different way. I'd really love to hear your stories. So please do share those in the comments section below. Also, if there's a job role that I haven't covered yet and you want me to cover that, then again, leave the details in the comment section and I will research that. To keep up to date with all the interviews in my series, How to Get into TV, Radio and Film, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. As always, it's been fantastic having your company. Thank you so much for joining me and see you next time.